Hello and welcome to this special edition of What Did I Miss? Where today I'm going over my top 10 list of the most memorable villains in Star Trek. First of all, I'd like to thank our followers on Twitter for participating in a poll that helped me pick this episode topic. It gave me a few other ideas for future episodes. If you'd like to participate in fun things like this, please follow What Did I Miss on Twitter, and there are links in the description of this video, as well as the channel to our Twitter page. And of course, please like and subscribe to this channel so I know that you enjoy the video. Nothing defines a franchise better than a good rogues gallery, and I challenge you to find another franchise with as diverse a roster of villains as Star Trek. From holographic madmen, to pieces of space junk, to telepathic clowns, Star Trek has seen its share of memorable adversaries. And while plenty have knocked our crews down a peg or two, none have been able to stop our heroes and instead made them that much stronger. Another hallmark of good villainy. Here I will go into what makes these scoundrels and sociopaths so memorable and why they stand out in a galaxy of evil faces. This is What Did I Miss?
I heard that's more your specialty.
One of the most unforgettable characters to come out of the original series, Mudd in a way is one of the most believable villains on this list. A grifter to his core, Mudd is able to manipulate people, entire crews, and autocratic governments to his will, and became a major pain for the Enterprise as well as the Discovery. First introduced on the original series, Mudd continually tries to swindle and trick his way to a better situation for himself, which usually leaves him one step forward but two steps back. Rainn Wilson added a rougher, more sinister personality to his version of the character on Discovery, and I have to say he was one of my favorite parts of the first season. In true Mudd form, he gains the ability to create a time loop, but instead of doing something good with the piece of stolen technology, he just uses it in a plot to steal more technology. He is the type of character who always keeps you guessing as to what his real motives are and how he will trick our heroes next. I hope we get to see Rainn Wilson again on Discovery, and if we do, I can see Mudd sliding up this list. While small in stature, quiet in voice, and having bad eyes but good ears, Weyoun was a reminder that great villains do not need to be all-powerful and menacing to be remarkable. All in all, 5 different clone versions of the Weyoun character were shown on Deep Space Nine, and each was played masterfully by one of the most memorable actors in all of Star Trek, Jeffrey Combs. As a Vorta, a clone of Weyoun could and would be produced after the death or malfunction of a prior clone, and all but one were just as conniving and deceitful as the ones before it. The only thing that would keep Weyoun in line was his undying love for the Founders, and because of that, he was the right hand of the leader of the Dominion Army, the female Changeling. She even remarked that he was the only solid she could trust, which is a ringing endorsement for his villainous ways. He was the one who would smile and pat you on your back while he was shoving you out of an airlock, and was probably the least trustworthy person in all of Deep Space Nine's run, except maybe for Garak, who ultimately gets to kill the last clone of Weyoun. Even still, the character left a lasting mark as a wicked one with a crooked smile and an unwavering loyalty for his creator. While most villains are in some way a mirror of their rival, Lore was literally a copy of his brother except for a few important differences, like having emotions. Brent Spiner did an excellent job playing the complete foil to his usual character Data, and created a character in Lore that was at first exactly what Data strived to evolve to, but quickly became an example of why Data is better the way he is. It is a great commentary on how the grass is always greener on the other side, and that who we strive to be may not be who we should be. All Data wanted to be was human, but when he met a more human version of himself, he saw how destructive emotionality could be. Even when Data eventually tries out an emotion chip, that has dire consequences, and at first leaves him vulnerable to an enemy and then to his own physiology. Lore uses his brother's empathy against him, and is not only a physical threat, but also creates doubt in Data's peers of what he himself is capable of. The sentience of artificial intelligence is further explored in the show Picard, with even more dire consequences. The fact that Lore is nearly indistinguishable from a member of the Enterprise bridge crew, plus has mental and physical prowess over even the Borg, and has a personality that can deceive and influence others, cements him as one of the most memorable villains of the Enterprise D and Star Trek as a whole. The first big bad of the rebooted timeline, Eric Bana as Nero was an imposing presence with a tragic backstory. Named after a Roman emperor who some believe disappeared and would return as the Antichrist, Nero had a life as a simple miner, but when his home planet Romulus is destroyed, he then decides to break bad and throw away everything for revenge. Nothing is more dangerous than a villain with nothing to lose and who thinks their cause is righteous, and Nero exemplifies this type of villainous archetype. The fact that he is responsible for the death of Kirk's father and partially responsible for Kirk's trajectory at Starfleet make him one of the most important figures in the new timeline, which unfortunately looks to now be contained within only 3 movies. He is also equal parts a villain of Spock and Kirk, which is not a common occurrence. His aggressive, brutish personality is a far cry from the stoic and condescending Romulans we are used to seeing, and Eric Bana deserves a lot of credit for creating a new face of an old enemy that dates back to the original series. I even think that you can see some of these personality traits in the Romulans we see now on the show Picard, which is another sign of the lasting effect of this performance. Some of the best villains are the ones we love to hate, and Kai Winn fits that mold entirely. The first known Karen in our universe, Kai Winn is a woman whose ambitions overshadow her faith and ultimately make her a heretic and conspirator against her own people. When we first meet Adami, she is struggling for control after the death of the Kai, who is the religious leader of her planet Bajor. She does everything she can to gain this position, which includes being complicit in the bombing of a school, and once there she becomes even more villainous in her attempts to keep that power and seize more, even going so far as to renounce the religion she supposedly dedicated her life to instead follow evil in the hopes of gaining more power. Of all the villains on this list, she might be the one with the least amount of redeeming qualities, if there are any. Also, the fact that she can cause some of the most damage without throwing a punch, firing a missile, or even raising her voice makes her not only dangerous, but relatable. We all know a Kai Winn in our lives, and we all hate her. In fact, I think the only time she made us happy was when her story was ended by another entry on this list. Another political opponent of the Federation, General Chang from Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, is a villain with a colorful image and a hardline personality that makes him stand out among a race of warriors. Although the Klingons have long been a thorn in Captain Kirk's side, General Chang may have been the closest to ending Kirk's life on not 1 or 2, but 3 occasions. First, after it is believed that the Enterprise fired on his ship, he is positioned to destroy the vessel, but Kirk's quick thinking to surrender stops his own impending doom. We next see Chang prosecuting Kirk and McCoy in Klingon court, which almost leads to their execution, but instead sends them to a Klingon prison planet. Finally, using a Klingon vessel that can fire while cloaked, he is able to severely damage the Enterprise, and without Captain Sulu coming to the rescue, the crew may not have had the time they needed to ultimately destroy Chang. Add to that, a masterful performance by the very talented Christopher Plummer, whose rapport with William Shatner is heightened by their previous working experience in other productions, and that Christopher Plummer was able to persuade the producers to have him wear less makeup to be more recognizable. It is easy to see why his performance as General Chang created one of the most memorable Klingons and villains in Star Trek. Being basically the eye of a hurricane, the Borg Queen provides order to chaos by leading the Borg across the universe in their attempts to make the galaxy great again. The Borg were first introduced as a force of nature on The Next Generation, when another entity occupying a slot on this list sends the Enterprise somewhere they definitely should not have been. Years later, one ship is able to nearly destroy the entire Starfleet Armada at the Battle of Wolf 359, but still, the Borg were found not to be menacing enough. So, a queen was born in the form of Alice Krige in the movie Star Trek First Contact. I do want to say that I enjoyed the performance of Susanna Thompson, who also played her, but I think Alice Krige's performance is the template for the role. Her version of a queen looked like a cyberpunk in a Hellraiser movie, but her performance made her somehow still attractive, which really messed with a 17-year-old version of me when I first saw it. Her actions were purely motivated by the continual growth of the Hive, which meant every species in her path was in trouble, but at times it also meant sacrificing her own kind, and she did that without hesitation and remorse. Her plan got her within a moment of destroying the Federation before it even came to be, and it seemed that she was close to converting a beloved member of the Enterprise crew. But in the end, she found out that Data is ride or die. Even still, it is hard to think of the Borg and not think of their queen. To quickly put into perspective how bad this guy is, he was basically Hitler before we even meet him. Dukat was a Cardassian Gul, or general, who was in charge of the occupying force on the planet Bajor and became one of the main villains on the show Deep Space Nine. A man who had no allegiances to anything but himself and his own desires. Dukat was constantly trying to take back Deep Space Nine and Bajor, which he saw as possessions that he had lost. Depending on his plan, we never knew which face of the character we would see, but in the end, it was always the one that helped him the most. Even efforts to redeem the character, which were attempted on more than one occasion, proved impossible because Dukat just could never get past himself. Mark Alamo's performance was so good that it was said that his co-stars had a hard time getting along with him on set because he would stay in character. Mark Alamo also said that he played him like he was a hero, because in his mind he was, and that just perfectly sums up how dangerous he could be. His insatiable desires made him completely unstable, which left a wake of scorched destruction behind him. Plus, he is responsible for the death of Jadzia, a beloved main character. Dukat will always be known as one of the most dangerous and most memorable villains ever to appear on Star Trek. Okay, before you start writing your comment, please understand the purpose of this list. This is not the deadliest, or the weirdest, or even the most powerful Star Trek villains. This is the most memorable, and how could you forget John Delancey as Q? I remember watching Encounter at Farpoint for the first time, and just being blown away that this was a thing. It wasn't Captain Picard, or a beardless Riker, or a yellow-eyed Data, or a Counselor Troy. Well, maybe it was a little Counselor Troy, but for the most part, it was Q that got me hooked on TNG right from the first hit. A personality as powerful as his abilities, Q is a member of an omnipotent race known as the Q and has been terrorizing the cosmos for eons. As holy shit as that sounds, there are actually quite a few omnipotent races in Star Trek, but what sets Q apart is Q. His banter is like a good SNL sketch every time he was given the opportunity to terrorize a crew. And make no mistake, he did horrible things and had no problem doing them. He killed many crew members just to show off his abilities. He sent the Enterprise to meet the Borg, which may have led them to attacking Earth, although there's an episode of Voyager and an episode of Enterprise that brings us into question, and was someone that Captain Picard described and went on an official record as devious, immoral, unreliable, irresponsible, and definitely not to be trusted. If this does not sound like a villain, I don't know what does. His interactions with Janeway proved to be a bit more hospitable, but even to her he was more foe than friend. It was only his respect for both captains that kept him from inflicting serious harm on them and their crews, which is more like keeping someone alive than saving them. While not a traditional villain, Q is definitely someone I'd rather never meet than know. Khan Noonien Singh is a villain that needs no introduction, but it would be kind of weird if I just stopped the video right now. And I want to say, like with my description of the Borg Queen and not really referencing Susanna Thompson's performance, I'm going to only discuss the performance of Ricardo Montalban and not that of Benedict Cumberbatch. From his first appearance on the original series' first season episode Space Seed, Khan became Kirk's nemesis after the events of the episode led to him being stranded on a barren planet and the loss of his wife. For years, Khan would rule on a hellish planet until the events of the second Star Trek movie brought him back to the stars. Although never occupying the same space as Kirk, he enacts a personal vendetta against him that cannot be curbed even by his trusted crew. Not to mention that he is the product of genetic modification, a plotline that would reoccur multiple times in Star Trek and even affect a certain DS9 crew member. The superior intellect and physical abilities he possesses, along with his enigmatic personality, make him a character that can lead and manipulate others, but does not need them to satisfy his goal. The obsessive desire to defeat his enemy is ultimately his undoing, but it is at the cost of the most human of crew members of the Enterprise. And that is the one thing that makes him the most memorable, because he is responsible for sending Captain Kirk towards a fate worse than his own death, the death of his best friend and compass. And what is a captain without a compass? Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I sure had a great time making it. I once again want to thank everyone who voted on Twitter, and actually let me thank all my followers on Twitter, because the community is really great there, and thank you for welcoming me in. If you have not yet, please like this video, and if this is your first time here, please subscribe, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?